For 40 years, this town called me a foolish old woman for keeping up a door in the ground. Let me tell you what it cost us to forget it was here.
The Saturday the sky turned the color of a bruise, and the new siren gave one sick groan and quit. The only door in Halford that would open was the one the council had voted 3 days before to fill in with dirt come Monday morning. I was 72 years old, and I was the one with the key. They had a name for me in that town, kind to my face and less kind behind my back, the cellar lady. The old woman who spent good money and good years on a hole in the ground nobody had climbed into since before the new families were born. I stood at the top of those concrete steps with the wind trying to tear the door out of my hands. And I watched my whole town come running across the square toward the one thing they had laughed at me for keeping. Stay with me. I am going to tell you why a person keeps a door oiled for 40 years against a day she prays will never come, and what it costs a town to forget that such a day was ever possible. Before we go on with Cora's story, if these quiet stories mean something to you, take a moment to subscribe and leave a like. And in the comments, tell me where you're listening from tonight. Wherever you are, I hope this light finds you warm. My name is Cora Hadley, and for the better part of 40 years, I have been to the people of Halford, Kansas, a harmless old joke with a broom and a flashlight. Halford sits in a flat green country that gives you everything but a place to hide, under a sky that can take a town apart between one breath and the next. Under the patch of grass in our square, behind a steel door set into a concrete mouth in the ground, is a room my husband helped build with the men of his generation, a storm cellar big enough to hold every living soul in Halford at once, with room to spare. I have kept it ready since the day he no longer could. That is the whole of my reputation here, the woman who looks after the whole. There was a time the whole county knew what that cellar was for. But safety is a thing people forget the moment they have it. The young families on the new road had basements and weather on their telephones. The town had bolted a siren to the water tower. And so the old shelter became a relic, a damp curiosity that a sentimental widow swept out for reasons of her own. I oiled the hinges twice a year. I kept the kerosene fresh and the water rotated. 40 wool blankets folded on the shelf, a hand crank radio, and a penciled list of every soul in town who could not get down a flight of stairs without a hand. People drove past and waved at me the way you wave at something you pity. 3 weeks ago, the council took up the question of the square. They meet in folding chairs in the back of the fire hall. And that night, near the whole town came, because the talk was about money. Ronnie Pratt, who runs the grain co-op and carries the loudest certainty of any man I have ever met, stood up first.
Folks, I'll say it plain, because somebody has to. Every year we pay to insure that old storm pit, to light it, to pump the water out of it, to shore up steps nobody walks down. It has not sheltered a living soul in 30 years. Every house built since the 70s has a basement under it. We have a siren on the tower and phones that holler at us before the clouds even stack up. That cellar is a liability. It is an eyesore, and that lot is the downtown parking this town has wanted for 20 years. I move we decommission it and fill it in. Monday morning, weather permitting.
A young man named Kyle Tarr seconded it before Ronnie had got his backside all the way back into the chair.
Second. And no offense to anybody, but my generation is not going to climb down a ladder into a wet concrete box in the dark when we can ride it out in our own basements with the lights on and the game still playing. It's 1950s thinking. Sell the lot. Pave it, move on.
I stood up. I am not a woman who likes to stand up in a room, and the standing cost me something. I said the only thing I had. A basement is a fine thing, Ronnie, right up until the power is out, and your own stairs are full of neighbors who don't have one. That cellar holds the whole town, every soul. There has never been another thing in Halford you could say that about.
With respect, Cora, and you know I respect you, when is the last time this whole town needed holding all at once? We are not our grandparents. We see these things coming now. The good Lord gave us Doppler radar so we could quit digging holes in the ground and live like it's a new century.
A few people laughed. Not cruelly, which is somehow worse than cruelly. And then Del Hollis, who is older even than I am, and was a boy here when I was a girl, cleared his throat from the back row. Because Hollis does not waste words.
I'll say one thing, and then I'll sit. I remember when that hole was not there. I remember what this square looked like the day before Walt Hadley picked up a shovel, and I remember the day before that one. Too. The bad one. You young ones don't, and that is not your fault. It's your good luck. But there is a difference between a thing that is useless and a thing that has only not been needed yet. Fill it in if you're going to. Just don't stand up there and call it useless. Call it what it is. Call it a bet that the wind will be polite.
It was a kind speech, and it changed not one vote. Fill it in. Monday. Erling Briggs, who has run the diner since Christ was a corporal and is the only person in Halford who never once called me the cellar lady, caught me at my truck in the dark.
You want me to throw a pie at that man? I will do it. Cora. I will throw a banana cream pie square into Ronnie Pratt's certainty, and I will not repent of it. 40 years he has been right about everything except the things that actually matter. And one of these days, the sky is going to make a liar out of him in front of God and everybody. I only pray you and I are standing somewhere we can watch.
I laughed, which I needed. Let him have his parking lot, I said. I did not mean it. But 40 years is a long time to be the only one in a town who still remembers a thing. People assumed I kept the cellar going for Walt, and they were not entirely wrong. Walt Hadley was the town's warden as long as the town bothered to have one, a railroad man with enormous careful hands, who read the weather the way other men read scripture. He poured the concrete for that shelter with his own back when he was young, and kept the warden's book ever after, a leather ledger in soft pencil. On the green evenings, he would take my hand on the porch and tell me the same thing.
The siren only tells you it's coming. Cora, it does not open a door for you. Somebody in every town has got to be the one who keeps the door, keeps it oiled, keeps it stocked, keeps the watch, long after everybody else has decided the watch is over. Might as well be the ones who already know what it's worth.
I asked him once, late, why he never let himself rest from it, not for a single season.
Because the season one rest is the season it comes. That is the only rule the weather has ever had, and it has never one time broken it.
When Walt passed, 10 years gone, I kept writing in that book, because stopping felt like telling him the watch was over. And I was not ready to. What none of us weighed in that fire hall, because weighing it meant imagining a day no one wants to imagine. was how thin the new safety really was. The basements were all out on the new road. The old road and the trailer court by the tracks had none. The siren was older than half the men who trusted it. And on the third Saturday of every May, the whole of Halford left its houses and came downtown for Founder's Day, every last soul out under that sky at the very same hour. Founder's Day came that year on the Saturday before the Monday. They meant to bring the dozer, hot and still and bright. The kind of stillness that should have told us something and didn't. Booths on the square, a ball game on the diamond, children with their faces painted, and that green sweetness in the air. The old people here learn to distrust in their teeth before they can say why. By 4 o'clock, the southwest had gone the color of a deep bruise, yellow, black, and low, and the flags stopped moving all at once, the way they do when the whole world holds its breath to decide. Then the siren gave one long, sick groan, dropped to nothing, and quit. A breath later, the power went with it. Every light in town. The band's speakers. The telephones, all reaching at once for a tower that had stopped answering. And 400 people understood, in the same terrible second, that their basements were a half-mile away behind locked doors, that the safety they had voted for that spring was useless out on the new road, and that they stood in the wide open with the sky coming down. I did not run. I am too old to run. And I had walked through this in my mind 10,000 nights the way you rehearse the thing you pray you will never have to do. I went to the steel door in the middle of the square, the one they had laughed at, took the key from my coat, where it has lived for 40 years, put my shoulder to the wind, and turned it.
It's open. The cellar's open. Quit standing there gawping and move. Get them to Cora. Get them down those steps.
They came not in a line, but in a flood, the whole of Founder's Day pouring toward a hole in the ground they had forgotten was under their feet. I held the door against the wind and sent them down into the dark I had kept ready. Jenna Ruiz from the trailer court reached me with a baby on her hip and a little one dragging from her wrist, white to the lips.
There's no room. There won't be room. Oh, God. My babies. There won't be enough.
There is room, I told her. And I heard Walt's steadiness come up out of me from some place I had kept it all those years. There has always been room. 40 years I have kept room. All the way to the bottom. Child. Mind the rail and don't stop. And Ronnie Pratt, who 3 days before had moved to fill it in, stood across that door from me, taking the old and the slow under their arms and handing them down to me one at a time.
Hollis, get the wheelchair down the ramp side. Cora's at the bottom. Kyle, get those kids off the diamond and run them. Do not let go of a single hand. We have got maybe a minute. Go!
It's on the ground. Cora, it's on the ground, west of the elevator. Big as the whole sky. Coming straight up the tracks.
That's everybody off the square. Cora, that's the last of them. Get down. Woman, get down and let Ronnie throw the bar. I have seen this one before and we are out of minutes.
The last man down those steps was Ronnie. I came after him and threw the iron bar. And the door I had oiled twice a year for 40 years, sealed against the worst thing that ever came to Halford. Above us, the storm took the town between its teeth. You have never heard a sound like it, and I pray you never do the roar, and under it the small noises of a place coming apart. And 400 people packed into the room my husband built. breathing in the lantern light, every soul accounted for. With a stranger's baby in my arms and the roof of the world screaming 6 feet over our heads, I will tell you the thing I have never once told this town in 40 years of sweeping its cellar. The day this room was built, it was built too late for some of us. Before there was a door in that square, a storm just like the one over our heads came down on a Halford that had nowhere to go, on a Founder's Day, with the children out at the ball field. There was no shelter to run for and no time to reach a house. We buried 9 children that week. My Ruthie was 7. She had a gap where her front teeth were coming in, and she was afraid of the dark, and she was one of the 9. After we buried them, Walt went quiet the better part of a year, and then he picked up a shovel. This room, this door, built deliberately too big enough it would never again come down to who had a basement and who did not. He made himself the warden so no other mother here would ever stand where I had stood at that ball field. When he was gone, I kept the door for him, and for her, and let the whole town believe I was only a sentimental old woman, because that was easier to carry through the grocery store than my little girl's name. The storm was over Halford in not quite 4 minutes. When I lifted the bar and pushed up into a light gone strange and clean, the town climbed out of the ground behind me into a place it did not recognize. The booths were gone. The ball field, where every one of us had stood 40 minutes before, was scoured to the dirt. The trailer court by the tracks, where Jenna Ruiz and her babies lived, was simply not there anymore. Halford was hurt that day. Hurt badly. But I want you to understand what I understood. Standing in that ruined square, with 400 living people rising into the light around me. There was not one funeral, not one. Every soul that storm came for had been standing in my husband's cellar when it arrived. They came to me over the next days the way people do when they need to understand something and don't have the words ready. Not in a crowd. Just one, and then another. Quiet, their hands not knowing what to do with themselves. Ronnie Pratt came to my porch on the second evening and stood a long while at the bottom of the steps before he could get any of it out.
I keep hearing myself, Cora, in that fire hall. When is the last time this town needed holding all at once? I said that, with my whole chest, 3 days before. And you stood there and took it off me. And then you stood at that door and held it open for every last one of us. For me, I handed you my own neighbors down those steps. And you would have caught me too. And I don't have the...
He could not finish it. He was not a bad man, only a comfortable one, and comfortable men forget. There is nothing you have to say. Ronnie, I told him. You said out loud what near everybody in this town had let themselves believe. That is not a sin. It is just the most dangerous thing there is, and now you have felt the bottom of it. That is worth more to me than any apology. Del Hollis came by too, the morning after, and stood at my gate a while before he said it.
I told that fire hall there's a difference between a thing useless and a thing not needed yet. I never wanted to be proved right about it. Cora, I'd have given a great deal not to be. You kept what the rest of us let ourselves forget. Walt would say you kept it better than he ever did, and Walt was not a man who handed out that kind of word.
I will be honest, because I promised you I would. It was not all gratitude in those first days. Grief and fright curdle strange, and more than one person landed sideways on it. Young Kyle Tarr said the thing out loud at the diner that a few of them were thinking quiet.
All I'm saying is, isn't it a little strange? 40 years she keeps that thing stocked and watered and bladed out clear, like she's expecting the end of the world. And then the one day the world ends, there it is. How'd she know? That's all I'm asking. How does an old woman know to be that ready?
Erlene set a coffee cup down hard enough to ring the saucer the length of the counter.
She did not know, Kyle, you sweet fool. She was not waiting for it. She was remembering it. There is a whole world of difference between those two things, and the difference is 40 years long, and you are too young and too lucky to feel the weight of it yet. That woman has kept a door for this town since before your mother could drive a car, and she never one time asked a single one of you to thank her. So you will drink your coffee, and you will hush, and when she walks through that door, you are going to stand up like your grandmother raised you to.
The council met again before the month was out and voted, without much talk in it, to keep the cellar where it was. They wanted a plaque by the door and asked me what it should say and who it should be named for, thinking, I believe, of Walt, who built it. But I asked them to put up the names of the 9 children instead, the 9 from before there was ever a door, because a town that has to read those names every time it crosses the square will think a long while before it calls a shelter an eyesore again. They did it. Ruthie's name is the 4th one down. I touch it sometimes when I think no one is watching, and they are kind enough to let me believe they don't see. In the fall, I took the key off my ring and the warden's book down off its shelf, drove out to where the new trailers were going up by the tracks, and put both into Jenna Ruiz's hands.
Cora, no. I'm 26. I've got 2 of them. Under 3. I don't know the first thing about any of this. You have to find somebody who actually...
A siren only tells you it's coming, I said. It does not open a door. Somebody in every town has to keep it, and it has to be someone who has stood in that dark and knows exactly what the door is worth. You stood in it. You held your babies in it. That is the whole of the qualification. Child, you hold the watch now. I will teach you the book. She looked down at that old leather a long moment, and then did the thing that told me I'd put it in the right hands.
Then you had better start teaching me everything. Start with why the steps face north. I've been turning that over since the day it saved my life.
And I laughed out loud in the dirt of that new lot, because the first question Walt ever made me answer was why the steps face north, and a person who thinks to ask it is already somewhere inside, keeping the watch. I am 72 years old. For 40 years this town believed I was a foolish old woman, keeping up a hole in the ground for a dead man's sake, and I let them, because the truth was too heavy to set down on a counter between the coffee and the change. Here is what I will leave you with. A town forgets what its safety costs the moment it feels safe, and there is always some quiet keeper the comfortable ones laugh at, holding a door against a day the rest have talked themselves out of believing in. Be kind to that one. Better yet, go and learn what they know, before the wind comes to teach the whole town at once. I keep a light burning over my own door now, every night. It costs me next to nothing. But on the hard nights, it reminds me that somebody once stayed awake in the dark and dug this town a place to be safe, long after it had already cost him everything, and that as long as I am breathing, the watch is not over, and the door stays open.